GearNetwork.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
Hey guys, I'm Felissa Rose Angela from Sleepaway Camp, and you're listening to the All Bets Are Off with Robbie Vegas podcast.
What's up, rock soldiers? This is the rockstar Robbie Vegas bringing you another episode of the All Bets Are Off podcast. We're rolling on with spooky season. We had Deborah Voorhees last week, and today we're going to be talking about the Ouija board. Now, I invited my good buddy Dan on the show. We've had a lot of experiences with this together, so we decided to put a little spin on it. We watched a movie called Ouija, The Origin of Evil. So we're kind of going to talk about the movie, but we're also going to talk about our own experiences. You guys will also be hearing more about that on an upcoming episode of the Confessionals podcast that I have already recorded that'll be coming out later this month. But for now, me and Dan are going to be here. We're going to dig into it. We're going to talk about how it impacted us, how crazy it was, how it really made believers out of us. And a lot of people say it's just a toy, it's just fun. But I think it really depends on where you got it from, who you're using it with, where you're using it. I think there's a lot of things that go into this that are unexplained, but I don't want to give too much away. I'm going to wait for Dan. So before I get him on, I do need to let you guys know that today's episode is once again brought to you by DB, which is a Scandinavian brand that makes backpacks and bags to help people on the move stay ready for anything. From the streets to the peaks, DB's gear is travel tested by some of the world's best athletes, adventurers, and creators. Over the past decade, DB has designed and developed, released and refined the best bags in the market. With DB's patented hookup system, you're able to attach smaller products to your backpack, roller, or tote. I say this every week, I'll say it one more time. This is an important feature for anybody who travels frequently. I don't care if you're in the entertainment industry, if you're just somebody who loves to go, sightseeing and wants to see the world, it doesn't matter. This is a seriously important feature, and these are great, great, great backpacks, bags, and so on, and I highly recommend checking out DB. So, we are teaming up with DB to exclusively offer our listeners 10% off your next purchase by using the code POD10 or going to the link in our show notes. So DB, it's time to move on, time to get going. Alright guys, thank you once again for checking us out, and since we're in spooky season, I'm going to plug my album Angels and Demons. You can get it on Spotify, Google Play, Amazon Music, iTunes, wherever you get it. I appreciate you. I thank you. Download it. Check it out. Again, it's called Angels and Demons by Robbie Vegas, and there's a couple songs on there that you could say are for spooky season, and here's one right now. This is Interview with a Vampire, and then we will get going with Dan.
Everything inside you died. Did you put up a fight? Did you welcome your sick side? Turn a light, watch you sail, live forever, life in hell.
Today's episode is brought to you by Anguished Allure magazine. Anguished Allure was founded in Buffalo and celebrates Halloween all year long. Anguished Allure magazine features gothic and horror-themed businesses, artists, and photographers. If you'd like to buy a copy and support them, or submit your own artwork or products, please reach out to them at anguishedalluremagazine.com. So one more time, that's anguishedalluremagazine.com. So please check them out, support our sponsor, and they're more than a sponsor. We absolutely adore this magazine, and we know that you will too. All right, Dan, thank you so much for being here, man. So I already did a brief intro before you came on and, told my listeners that we had our own experiences. And right now you are located in Salem, which a lot of people will find very spooky this time of year. But for you, it's just every day you look out your window at your little graveyard and you're happy to be there.
Yeah, the graveyard is in the back. It's the Quaker cemetery.
kind of lost its novelty for me and just became the backyard after a couple months. I wanted it to be haunted, but, you know, I've experienced hauntings with you, and my house is not haunted, so...
Well, as you're saying this, your black cat comes onto the screen, and it was just...
Well, he's just jealous because I'm talking to somebody else.
Oh, I see. Yeah. That couldn't have been any more perfect, though.
Yeah, it was. No, yeah, he's lurking around. That's George. Georgenstein.
I love it. I love the name. Now, I want to tell my listeners, too, that you just alluded to, we've had experiences together. You've been to my haunted house, and this was years ago. This is over 10 years ago at this point, because we were late teens, early 20s, maybe, somewhere in there. Yeah,
about that.
Now you have the planchette tattooed on your hand because it left a very big impact on us because we actually experienced a lot of things that stuck with us to this day.
It did, and I think it was happenstance that, you know, I ended up doing my doctoral degree on spiritualism and capitalism in the 19th century United States. You know, I've always been interested in the idea of talking to the dead, and I thought Ouija was, you know, fascinating, but it wasn't set in stone that I was going to do that project. I mean, I specialized in Cold War history, which is an entirely different decade, but then in grad school just gravitated towards the spiritualism thing when I saw it start coming up in some courses I was taking. So yeah, it's been like a pretty consistent theme with me, or like constant current in my life. You know, we had the haunting thing with you and your place, and then kind of went away for a while. I forced it out of my life. And, you know, then it just reared its head again. And yeah, now being in Salem, I mean, there's the Talking Board History Museum up the road. There was like Ouijazilla that made an appearance in Salem like a year ago, or I think it was some point during the pandemic or right before the pandemic. It's the world's largest Ouija board. They set it up in Salem Commons. So yeah, I mean, it's it just sort of keeps being this lightning thing that strikes. So I don't mind it. I think it's all still cool. I wouldn't want to live in that house that you grew up in, and that I made you bust the board out all those nights.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about that, but we also decided that we were going to watch the movie Ouija, however you want to say it. I hear people say it both ways. I say Ouija board. Some people say Ouija board. I don't know I don't know what the proper way is after all these years. But so we're going to talk about both. That movie is called The Origin of Evil, and we kind of decided we were going to watch it and then see, you know, what we went through compared to like what this movie was kind of sensationalizing, we'll say, because some of it was really like blown out of the water, obviously.
Yeah, I think sensationalizing's a perfect word for it, and I do have the English PhD, so trust me, you did well. No, yeah, I mean, so we should maybe set up the basic premise of it. Wikipedia is useful in that regard. A widow and her family introduce a Ouija board into their phony seance business, thereby inviting a spirit that possesses the youngest daughter. So that's like a quick and easy synopsis. What I liked about it was, you know, so the mother is a widow and she's supposed to be a medium, and she's basically a huckster. Like, after the opening scene, you find out immediately that, you know, she had some staging under the table. She had her daughters hidden behind, like, curtains, and the youngest daughter, I think, was in a cabinet, like, locked in there and, like,
yes,
working candles and stuff like that. That story is kind of old as time, at least in a U.S. context, because mediums were usually women, and they were usually single or widowed. It was usually after the breadwinner had died, so, you know, father figure died or is otherwise out of the picture. So a woman is left sort of fending for herself, whether she's got children or not. And kind of just works in the business of anxiety and uncertainty. So, like, the clients who come in, usually people who have passed recently, you know, or the bereaved. I mean, they're wanting to get in touch with loved ones. And there's usually always, like, a monetary undercurrent. You see that in the first scene in that movie.
Yes.
Where there's, like, an old man and his daughter's there with him, and the daughter's really skeptical.
Yeah.
And he's, like, you know, wanting to ask his wife, his dead wife, for advice. And he's like, our daughter met this guy, and he's got a business enterprise. They want a lot of money from me. What should I do? you know? And, like, if the business works, he'll marry the daughter. So, yeah, there's this economic anxiety undercurrent, and there's, like I said, the single or widowed mother/woman/provider.
Yeah.
And they lived in, like, a pretty dope house. So, like, and what were they collecting, like $5 per seance or something?
Yes.
So that's a mystery.
She must have been, doing a lot of seances. You know, I'm thinking there was at least 45 a day to live in the house that she was living in.
Right. And I'm appreciative of the fact, it was 1967, but it does say it was in Los Angeles. So, I mean, you got to be making some decent bread to get that going. Yeah,
$5 per 30-minute seance to live in a house that I assume was, in 67, what could we say was like a $200,000 house, which by today's standards would probably be a hell of a lot more than that. So,
No, yeah, and the mother didn't seem especially like perturbed about money or anything. She seemed more like, oh, we just want to make sure we put on a good show and don't scare the clients, all that kind of thing. We're here to provide a sort of like comforting service. So yeah, that's what they do. And then how does the Ouija get introduced into it? The daughter and her friends are playing with one?
So the mother kind of makes it seem like they're doing not a con artist type of act, but a service to people, like we're helping people heal. That's how she projects it to her daughters. And then her daughter sneaks out one night and her friend has the board. And I liked when they first introduced the board because they weren't, the daughter, knowing that her mother's a con artist, is saying this stuff is fake. And that part I did like, because how many times did you bust out a board when you're younger and people are like, that stuff is fake, man? Like, somebody moves it without knowing it, or somebody pushes it to where they want to push it to freak everybody out, and you have to ask it questions nobody knows, and, and she was kind of going through that same motion with her friends. And saying, like, this, it doesn't work the way you think it works. We're doing it. Somebody's doing it. And the one girl's freaking out, which that part did make me laugh, as she says, show us a sign. And the mother basically kicks the door open because there wasn't supposed to be anybody in there. And the girl screams for, like, an elongated, 15-second scream.
Yeah, they really went over the top with that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, around that circle of players, I think they were just trying to sort of prep the audience for what they were seeing, because they do explain quite a bit of it. I mean, the daughter of the mother sort of huckster character is like, oh, this is all fake and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Or even if it's not fake, it's like, it's just your subconscious or something, or it's like cumulatively, like everybody's hands on the planchette, we're directing it where we want it to go.
Yes.
And then, the one girl was insanely panicked, kind of overacting, but she did a good job.
Yeah.
And, then the other girl was kind of just, like, testing it. She kind of wanted to keep pushing the envelope. And then there was just, like, that random male there to, I think, just plant the seeds of the boyfriend-girlfriend relationship.
Yeah.
And then we know what happens to him.
Yes. Well, one thing that I liked right off the bat that you can attest to is the rules of playing, because I remember us having similar rules, the biggest of which is you have to say goodbye. Because if you don't say goodbye, the board is supposed to have left open portals to wherever you were playing. And I also do remember being told at one point, which I don't know how we knew this or how whoever told us knew this, was not to play in cemeteries. And I don't remember how we knew any of this stuff, because the board that I had or somebody had given to me was so old that we don't even know where it came from. It, like, somebody pulled it out of somebody's attic and they were like, who wants this? And I was like, I'll take it. And that's how I got the board. So we don't even know where the thing came from, but I remember it looked a lot different than ones that they were selling in stores at the time. It wasn't one of those Milton Bradley ones that glowed in the dark, or like, you know what I mean? It was real old school.
No, yeah, I think yours was it had that mystic with, like, the blue cloak on the front of the box. I want to say, and I should know this, I don't know what year in the 60s or 70s, but I've seen those since, and I always, like, immediately have more respect for them, because I know that yours worked.
Yes, yeah.
And I have not bought one because I don't really want the option in my house.
Yes, right.
I have some, but no, I don't think I have that particular model of it. I don't know where we picked up the rules either. I don't know if that's a cultural thing where we're kind of just like, maybe we heard it or saw it in a movie somewhere.
Yeah.
Or in the culture, because I think I was kind of just holding your hand throughout all of it, or you were holding my hand and saying, like, these are the rules, Dan. Because the one that I did know about, I think, was that you should say goodbye to it, or that just made, like, complete and total sense to me.
Right.
It was just like, that's a sensible thing to do. We want to, like, close the door here.
Yeah.
The cemetery thing also seems like common sense. I wouldn't go and tinker with one in a cemetery.
Yeah, can you imagine?
I think you also, like, the sort of opening salutation of, like, are there any spirits that wish to communicate?
Yes.
Because we would always start it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And in the movie, they recite something. It's like this little rhyme.
Yeah, I didn't know about that. That was something that when they started doing, I was like, we never did that and we never had any problems.
Yeah. Well, maybe they wanted to just sort of convey the ritual of it.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Because it was, even though we didn't do that sort of thing, and then I feel like the girl always, like, took the planchette and, like, you know, ran circles around the board first or something.
Yes.
And she had, it was that glass thing, that was totally alien to me. I was just like, we never held the planchette up and looked through the hole in it.
Okay, so that was one of the first things I wanted to bring to your attention, is that's something I'd never heard of ever until watching this movie. So you said you had seen it before and you needed a refresher, so you watched it again. That was the first time I saw it ever. So when she did that, I was like, I don't get it. But I get what they were, like, going for. Like, look through this and you could see the spirits you're talking to. And I don't know. To me, that was just a little bit too much, because I remember us thinking you don't ask to see them. That was another rule that we had, is that you're not supposed to ask to see them. Like, you can ask for, like, knocks and, like, things to move, or, like, are you here kind of proof. But it was always like a big no, don't ever say to show yourself, because that's when you open a door that's too big. You know what I mean? And you give them more energy, more power, essentially. And I don't know where we even got that from, but we seem to know these things. And when I say, you know, years ago, yeah, we were kids, but we also were, like, young adults. It's not like we were, like, little kids just screwing around. It was between the ages of, like, 19 and, like, 21.
Yeah. I feel like it was, what was this, like 2006, 2007?
Yes.
Had to have been. No, yeah, I think that they totally put that glass, you know, window or whatever you want to call it in the planchette in just as a sort of film device, because that's one of the first real, like, jump scares in the movie, where the girl is looking through it and then you sort of experiencing her perception right along with her.
Yes.
That's just like a primo opportunity to, you know, get scared by something, or, you know, something's going to jump out.
Right. And I did.
And and it kind of, like, jumps right into her mouth.
Yeah.
At one point. So, no, yeah, I did catch that, even though the older I get, I kind of hold my laptop up in front of the screen as I'm watching TV if I know something's going to scare me. But no, I felt like that was a total film device, just because I never saw anything like that. I never saw, heard of, or read anything like, and whatever you do, don't hold the hole in the planchette up to your eyeball, you know? Whereas these other things are sensible that we've been talking about. Say goodbye to the board. Don't sort of, like, double dog dare it to do things, or, like, you know, reveal itself.
Yes.
And yeah, I don't know where all that comes from, because it's the original Ouija board didn't have, like, a sheet of these sort of, you know, don't sort of F with this kind of rules.
No.
It was basically like, you know, lay it on your lap, a gentleman and a lady preferred. It was it said something like that, if, like, you know, you're supposed to have a boyfriend girlfriend sort of set up around it. But no, there was nothing really, like, overtly occultist about it, of like, say goodbye in this way on this day and all that. So yeah, I don't know, I feel like that's all kind of had more momentum the more that the board sort of gains notoriety throughout the 20th and 21st centuries. Because if you say Ouija to anybody now, it's like, you know, associated with the devil or demons or the general occult. It didn't originally have those connotations. It was more of, like, it was a board game.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, it was for communicating with, loved ones, essentially, who passed on. But we talked about the introduction that the daughter had to the board in the movie, but do you want to give people a quick introduction to the one that you had at my house? Because you kind of came over and were hearing things and looked at me like, what the fuck is going on? So I'll let you tell it from your perspective, because for me it was normal. So I was just kind of like, yeah.
No, I would love the opportunity to finally commit this to a recording. It's going to have posterity and perpetuity throughout the universe forever and ever.
You picked the right place.
So I don't even remember, we must have just chatted on AOL Instant Messenger or something, because we weren't, regularly hanging out or nothing. It was I hadn't seen you in years. We played baseball, Little League, growing up together.
Mm-hmm. I think we crossed paths with some music, too. More so
we both definitely got into guitar playing.
Right.
I was gigging out at the time. I might have run into one of those places, and then I don't know.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't remember how I ended up in your basement, but I was like, okay, I'm going to Rob's. Everything's cool.
Yeah. Honestly, I think it was a gig. I think that, I don't know if we were playing at the same place, because I don't remember if we ever played the same night, but either way, I might have been at one of your gigs just in passing, and it was like, hey, man, and just started up a conversation, but all of a sudden you were at my house.
Yeah. So I was down there. I know some other friends of ours from back in Lackawanna were there. If you want to say there was 4 or 5 of us in the basement. We're playing PlayStation. So I'll set the stage, too, for the layout of the basement, because that always comes up in the story. Half of it was finished, sort of like bachelor pad, living room looking place. It was just a cool hangout. The other half of it's unfinished. Laundry room. There was linens and a drum set in there.
Yeah.
So it's all got wood paneling, partition wall, divider right in the middle. And the stairs to go upstairs are on the finished side. So we were just hanging out. Nothing felt remotely spooky. That wasn't even on my mind. I was just like, this is a cool basement. Probably playing Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine or some kind of old school WWE game.
Yep.
And then we shut the TV off and everything. And somebody said, what do you guys want to do now? Maybe go grab Mickey D's or something. It was quiet. There was just a lull. I think everybody was on their flip phones. And I heard, I always use the adjectives guttural, unearthly moan. And it was a drawn-out thing coming from the other side of the wall in the unfinished basement, or in the unfinished half of the basement. And this is my first time there. I'd probably been there for an hour or two. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't heard anything like that yet, except for when it got quiet. And I go, I think I said, what the fuck was that? And you were very nonchalant, unfazed, and you go, my house or my basement does that sometimes. I don't remember if you said my house or my basement. And I said, huh? What the fuck are you talking about? Basements don't do that. And I thought you all were screwing with me. I thought this was, I was on Pranked or something. And somebody was going to jump out and say, oh, we scared Dan or whatever. So I said, fuck you guys. And I went, I was like, there's got to be a stereo, radio or somebody hiding underneath blankets or something in that room. So I went to the unfinished half of in the basement, the laundry room. And there was a big pile of laundry. And I remember kicking it and tossing it every which way. Nobody was under there. There was no radio. There was no living presence in there. There wasn't one of your buddies or nothing. So when I came to that realization of okay, what you just heard, that voice wasn't coming from a human being or a recording or anything, my immediate thought was get out of the laundry room, shut the door behind you. And then my secondary reaction was, you have to start prodding Rob for some information. And I think that it was pretty palpable. I was asking a lot of questions because I never experienced anything like that in any house I ever grew up in or visited. None of my friends or anybody, relatives, had a haunted house to my knowledge. That was my first. And to describe to the listeners, like the guttural, unearthly moan, it kind of reminded me of, they do a really over-the-top thing in Beetlejuice with it, but I would say Beetlejuice, when Adam and Barbara are first, like, oh, we should just try to scare them out of our house.
Yeah.
And they're walking around going like, oh,
yeah.
And it was like that, but it was extremely deep.
Yeah.
It was kind of just like one tone or one pitch, and it was frequent.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah.
I couldn't tell you how many times that happened there when I was there.
Well, the weird thing about that was that I had heard it prior to having the board in the house, and when you started coming over, we had already had the board, but like newly had the board. I mean, like it might have been weeks. And I remember saying like, well, we'll try it at my house, because I would already hear like knocks and walking and light switches and things like that. So I had already been experiencing sounds, the moaning that you were talking about. So why I thought it was a good idea to antagonize these things that were already happening, I don't know. I guess I just figured, well, if we're going to get something somewhere, it's going to be at my house. So I brought it down. But I remember you being super intrigued to the point where, like, it became a thing where we would play it with other people, but then it dwindled down to where it would just be me and you, the two of us. And the basement was not small. So it was me and you in this big, empty, dark basement, and we played the board with just candles. So it was like you could only make out the board, but the candles gave off just enough light to see shadows and movement and darker shadows than the room was dark, which would really freak us out, because even then we were like, dark means bad, something's going on. And right now my listeners are going, what the fuck are you talking about? But when we started playing the board, we started getting the same entities over and over again. And we knew the good ones from the bad ones, and we would see figures walk through walls, and like we would see shadows like dissipate into nothing or form from nothing, and we would hear noises like the moaning, and we would hear knocks, and we would hear steps and footsteps and things moving around. And I don't think people realize that those boards are really nothing to play with, because the activity, even after we would say goodbye and you would go home, I would have to go to sleep there, and my bedroom door would be opening. And I remember telling you that, and you were like, what do you mean? And I remember walking in, and like the door opened behind me. And I would close it, and it would pop open again. And I would close it, and it would pop open again. And I would really have to like try and jam it with force before it would stop. And I remember that was one of those nights where, like, the next night when you came over, I told you about it then. I don't know if you recall us having this conversation then or when we re-talked about it a few weeks ago, but it was so mind-blowing to me, because I was like, it's actually making whatever was already here stronger, more active. I don't know the word, but it was definitely more frequent, to say the least. Yeah,
I mean, I think that makes total sense to me, that it would get more, I would use the word potent.
I like it.
And it's sort of like energy or whatever. But yeah, I mean, so that first night, I had said to you, you got to tell me everything. I think that it was that very first night you said, well, I do have a Ouija board. And I don't know if we played it that night, but I was like, well, we have to play it at some point soon, because my thinking was, I had never played one before, and I wasn't particularly like scared of them or a believer in them. Yeah. I had no idea what was going to happen. I probably had like very low hopes for anything. And I haven't played with one anywhere since. I think I did try to break one out when we first moved into this place, and there was nothing. Yeah. Like, no traction, no reception whatsoever. Well, you used to feel presences leave with you when you left my house. And to me, that was also pretty mind-blowing, because that meant whatever we were inviting wasn't just anchored to where we were. So, true. Yeah, so I mean, I think that tying those two things together, there is something that's just got to be like about your house or that space that we were in, that you get incredible like bandwidth. You have really good like spirit connection. Yeah. In that underground room, and apparently throughout the rest of your house, because I mean, some of the stories that you tell about, hearing, if you were laying on the couch, that one story about like Was it you or your sister?
It was me.
And you heard somebody come down the stairs, and you thought it was her, and then you looked, and there's nobody?
Yes, and the way I was laying is my head would be where the stairs would end. And it was a common sound because there was, 4 of us that lived there, so you would hear it all the time, and you would look, and whoever would be coming around the corner from the stairs. And it happened to me 2 or 3 times to where I would hear them hit that last, landing and turn, and then there would be nothing. And there's no mistaking it. Now you're looking around behind you, so we got some activity going.
No, I wondered. There was a skunk by the back door last night. I just want to make sure that, the cats haven't, gotten sprayed or busted out of the screen or nothing like that. But no, so, I mean, it wasn't just the basement. It was your whole goddamn house.
Yeah.
And, there would be nights, especially when we stayed up until, 3, 4 in the morning, if we were having, a pretty good back and forth with the board, if the whatever thing was making that moaning sound, there were nights where that was just friggin' constant.
Yeah,
there were times where I was like, is the rest of your family gonna come down here? And be like, what the hell is even happening? Because it was just there were nights where it was absolutely insane, and it was those nights, and it was nights where the conversations with the board, if they felt especially sort of meaningful or suggestive, and suggestive could be good or bad.
Yeah.
If you felt like you were really getting some sort of, insights from the spirit world, whether it was malevolent sort of shit or benevolent, it was those nights where I would leave, and it could just be sort of, the brain is an interesting organ, and perception's an interesting phenomenon. I don't know if it was just me, psyching myself out or scaring myself. I did literally feel like I got followed home, or there was something following me then upstairs to my bed in my room. So yeah, I think I would say, there probably was. And again, this is coming from somebody I'd say I'm pretty open-minded about all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But I had no idea that things like what we went through were even possible in this world.
Yes.
So.
And I think it's fair to say, too, so that people think we're not just going on feelings, is that we would literally ask for knocks or signs or sounds, and we would get them. And they would come through within seconds. And that's just not something that you can... we're the only 2 people there for a lot of it, but sometimes I remember one specific time that a buddy of yours, you were telling him about it, and he just had to see it for himself. And you brought him down, and another mutual friend of ours came with, and the 4 of us got the same activity without just being me and you, and they were mind blown. They couldn't believe it. And here's a quick one that I remember from back then. I don't know if you'll remember this, but I told you one night it was getting close to 3 a.m., and we were still up. And it was just one of those slow nights. We played the board earlier, and there was no activity. So, again, it's not like we had activity blowing out our ass every single time we touched the thing. And it was one of those nights where we were like, there's really nothing happening. And then all of a sudden, we're playing our, Sonic, Dr. Mario, Mean Bean Machine, all the old school stuff. And I said, it's coming up on 3 o'clock. That's supposed to be the witching hour. Maybe we should bust out the board. And you looked me dead in the face. And you were so serious, and you go, do you think spirits are aware of daylight savings time?
Yeah. That does sound like something I would ask you.
And I go, I don't really know, but right now we're between 2 and 3, so we're pretty safe either way.
Yeah. No, yeah, I mean, we should give some examples of, the kind of shit that happened, because it wasn't just that noise. Mm-hmm. The guttural sound, which would have been fascinating enough on its own. Mm-hmm. So I remember one of the first times we ever played with it, I had ascertained for myself, for everyone who was playing the board at the time, that everyone in this world, all living humans, has some sort of spirit guide with them. And I don't know if it's a chicken and the egg kind of thing. I'm kind of personally fascinated with where do your spirit guides come from, because it seems that there's an infinite amount of them if everyone has one. Right. Everyone who's lived and died. So, mine was named Amanda, or that's how the spirit identified herself. Mm-hmm. And I had asked her, if you've been around for all of this, you know that I play music. What's your favorite song of mine? And the response was, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't have the transcript in front of me, so I didn't write any of this down. But the response from Amanda was, "You haven't written my favorite song of yours yet," which I thought was like a cute way to evade answering my question. So I said, "That's very cute, Amanda. Of the songs that I have written, what's your favorite song?" And she spelled out "Along for the Ride," which was a song.
Yes.
It was the first song on Kickstarter. And I was in a jovial mood at the time, so I was like, "Oh, wow, that's your favorite." So I started singing the first verse of it with my fingers on the planchette. And it's, I think of you when I sing all my favorite songs. I don't remember what the next one is at this moment in time. But the board spelled the next line, and it was moving at such a trek that it like went off of my fingers. Like it was doing it itself, and then it just, I remember went like, and it just went off of the board.
Yes, yeah. And that was not uncommon. Like, just to throw that out there, not to interrupt you, but there were many times when that thing would get going and we would lose control of it and it would shoot off the board. It was just out of our control. Yeah.
And I'm not gonna say over embellish this or exaggerate it like the origin of evil would. Like the planchette didn't lift up in the air and like shoot across the whole room or something like that. But the velocity of this thing with its little like, felt legs or whatever it had, it was moving so fast that I lost control of it and it went off of the board. So that was fascinating. I don't think that was my subconscious because I just don't. And there were a lot of other things that happened as far as answers that it gave us that were kind of holy shit sort of moments.
Yes.
Which we could talk about. We could also talk about the external stuff where the board started affecting people who weren't even awake.
Yes.
People who weren't at your house.
Yes. Yep.
That's a good story. I'm not going to name names. I'll use a pseudonym. Should I tell that one next?
I think you should, but before you do, I want to point something out because a scene in the movie made me think of something that you were just saying, how we're asking the board questions as like a means of proof. And there was a scene in the movie where the priest comes to the house because by this point the little girl Doris is possessed and he wants to, quote-unquote, see her gift. What we really know is he's trying to see if she's possessed. So he comes in and he sits down and he's asking questions and he pretends that all the questions answers are correct. Come to find out later that they were wrong because he cleared his mind and thought of the wrong answers. Which leads us into, when you're on the board, you don't know if you're talking to a good spirit or a bad spirit, angels or demons. And a lot of the demons, I don't know if it was back then or something I heard of recently, they're tricksters. They don't come to you and let you know that they're up to no good. They will disguise themselves as something that they're not. So you never really know who you're talking to or what they're capable of or what's going to happen. So they tell you to be cautious no matter what, no matter who's coming through, who they say they are. And in the movie, she's trying to mask herself as having a beautiful gift, like sent from God. She's possessed. She gives him the wrong answers, and that's where he tells, she's not actually channeling anyone on the board. She's possessed and she's reading my mind. Obviously, we didn't have this whole mind reading thing going on when we were playing with the board and, all that stuff. Later on down the road, we found out that somebody close to me got an attachment from the board. I won't go into the full story, but it was a bad attachment. It lasted for a long time. So I think in that way, the movie sensationalized it a lot. But at the same time, I used to wonder, what if I was thinking the answer and it knows what I'm thinking? And I used to try and think of other things or not think of anything at all and just like focus on the board. I don't know if you ever did that because we never really talked that far into like what was going on in our minds when we were asking questions, but I would try to ask questions that, like, I would ask a question for you because I knew that, I didn't know the answer, so I wasn't going to move it. And then, like you said, that night, it went off the board so much that both of our hands came off of the planchette, and it kept moving long enough to actually go off the board without any of our fingers on it. So, like, that's where we got okay, this thing knows what it's doing, and it is answering on its own. And that's when we decided that we knew that. So just kind of a weird contrast between what happened in the movie and what happened to us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the movie, again, it's a good sort of ploy as far as just the narrative of the film is concerned, because they have a sort of, the guy's a priest, and he's coming to sort of like sleuth or detective the situation, really because of, just to follow up on what he had seen in the writing.
Yeah.
Because they had that whole weird Nazi backstory or some shit like that.
She was writing in Polish, even though she was like, I don't know, how old was she supposed to be? 7 or 8 or something? Or
she was definitely young. I mean, I wouldn't say any more than 10 or 11. So, in the film, it's kind of like, oh, we got a gotcha moment where the priest sort of briefly one-ups the demon, and then you find out the demon totally has the upper hand because it can sort of it's overbearing on everything that happens in the whole house. So, I do remember that I guess this was us just as kind of good amateur investigators, because I remember we would do those kinds of things of you asking questions for me and me asking questions for you.
Yeah.
I honestly, that priest in the film says something at one point about I just make my mind go blank, like static on a television set.
Yes.
I feel like that's pretty much where I was at.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't, when I would ask it things, I wasn't anticipating certain answers. So I would blank out. I also remember that I would try to strategize how I asked questions so that there wasn't any, or that there was as little ambiguity as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So very explicit or direct in what I was asking it, so that it couldn't be kind of well, did you mean this or did you mean that?
Right.
You know what I mean? So, no, I mean, I think that we played it really cool with the board. And yeah, I mean, I left everything obviously obsessed. I mean, I came over your house for 4 months in a row, and it wasn't until, you mentioned things getting dark for other people. That was where I kind of took my cue. And I feel like we had already kind of gotten carried away with it.
Yeah, for sure. It was almost an obsession.
Yeah. I mean, I would just cut out the almost, say I was definitely obsessed. I don't know where you were at with it. I just thought it was lightning doesn't strike twice, or, we had struck gold kind of thing of why wouldn't we become sort of paranormal, I don't know, investigators or just connoisseurs. Yeah. We have a really haunted basement here. We might as well try to mine as much information as we can.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, after the fact, I've never missed it once. I don't, I mean, I miss hanging out. don't get me wrong. But
with the board or with me?
With you.
Oh, okay.
And the board. But, no, I mean, I don't lay awake at night and say shit, man, I wish I had a haunted house and a Ouija board to play with. You know
That's
what I mean?
good.
Because it was titillating, but it was also 110% really goddamn frightening sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't know. It was enough for me to just say, okay, I sort of proved this thing to myself.
Yes.
Or I had these experiences, and I think they're cool for what they were. I don't need to, do this professionally or, do it around the clock or ever again, for that matter.
Yeah. Well, one more thing that was said in the movie that we didn't touch on yet, but we knew, was that you were never supposed to play alone, and none of us did, which in the movie is how the little girl ends up possessed, as she does play alone. But the scene in that where she does, get possessed and she plays by herself and all this crazy stuff starts to happen, or when the mother starts playing by herself and the daughter starts talking, to allude to what you were talking about earlier, how it was affecting people who weren't even in the room or in the house.
Yeah.
The first time that happened was somebody in the house sleeping upstairs was having a nightmare that the board was telling us about in the basement. And I remember the board saying dream and cemetery, and then we heard that there was the exact same dream going on in another room for somebody who wasn't even playing, but we never played alone. So it was always at least two of us. But that was the one that was in the house, but you can go ahead and tell the story of somebody being affected who wasn't even there, because that one, I think, to me, was more mind-blowing, because I could see somebody in another room being affected, because it's the energy's in the house, right? Mm-hmm. But for somebody to be being affected who wasn't in the house and was also roughly 7 streets down. Yeah. Now, that was mind-blowing beyond belief.
No, yeah, I mean, also the actual content of what was said. So, just to protect this person's anonymity, identity, confidentiality, and all that, we'll say that their name was Veronica.
I like
it. So let me set the stage. It was a pretty slow night from my recollection.
Yep.
Me and you were sitting at the table and on the board. I don't remember if we were actually like touching the planchette because we would go down there, drink beers.
Yep.
I would, chain smoke cigarettes and all that. So we're just sort of hanging out. It had to have been 1:30, 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
It was really late.
Yeah.
And
creeping up on that witching hour.
yeah. So extremely late. I think it was a school night, even though we weren't in school at the time. Because I don't remember it being a weekend or nothing like that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Could have been a Tuesday for all I know.
I know that we were definitely not in high school though. We were like 19, 20.
Yeah, because I remember I was still working at Swiss, and I would close that restaurant, and I would come to your house and play with a Ouija board.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was very late. Not a lot of traction on the board that night, kind of dull. And I had just sort of said aimlessly or to myself, I wonder what Veronica's doing.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I would just wonder what Veronica's up to. And you, being the rationalist that you are, said, she's probably sleeping. It's like 2 a.m.
Right.
And I laughed and I said, yeah, you're probably right. So then 5 or 10 minutes go by, and your flip phone, because back in those days we all had our flip phones, whatever you had, it was a vibrating phone. 5 to 10 minutes go by, and it was still like, it was silent. We weren't listening to music or nothing. We're just sitting at the table with the board. Your phone vibrates. It made both of our, hearts jump. We leapt up in our seats kind of thing, and then we're laughing at what a couple of bitches we are, because there was no 2 other people in Lackawanna doing what we were doing that night.
Yeah, right.
Getting scared by vibrating phones at 2 a.m.
Of course.
And we were laughing about it a little bit, and I looked across the table at you open your phone, and the smile on your face from laughing with me just like washed off of your face. Your mouth dropped. You got a real serious look on your face, and you go, "It's Veronica. Texted you." And I said, "What did she say?" And you said, "I'm scared." That's what she texted you 5 to 10 minutes after I said near the board, maybe my hands were on the planchette, I don't know. Wonder what Veronica's doing. And I said, well, I don't know if I was like feeding you questions. I think you said like, why, what's up or something.
Yeah.
And her response to that was, my house is making noises.
Yeah. And it was obviously something that she didn't experience ever, or else she wouldn't be so freaked out by it. And the other weird thing is, why did she text me? Because this wasn't a normal occurrence where it would be a text coming to my phone at 2 o'clock in the morning. There would have been like 5 people before me. So me and you were just kind of like, so what do we do about this?
Yeah. I don't remember that we really like actively did anything.
We didn't. I remember,
in retrospect, I think I would have gone on the board and said, leave her alone.
You probably did. My question, though, I think we did, like, say something, though, like, we did ask her for more detail. And we were like, what? Like, what are you hearing? And I believe some of the stuff that she told us was stuff that we would normally hear. And we were kind of like, oh, shit. Like, did we just do something by, like, having this thing out in front of us while we're popping beers and talking about people? And, like, all of a sudden, like, oh, I know who that is. I'll go bother her. You know, like, you know what I mean?
Only
because
7 streets from here? Piece of cake.
Exactly, because you know what, though? She had been in that basement before, so it's not like she was, like, a stranger to the area or to my house. And so, I don't know, it was just it's one of those things where people could say, that's a coincidence, but it's like, that night of all nights, 5 minutes after, I don't think so.
No, I mean, I'm totally appreciative of skeptics or skepticism and like, oh, well, that's what you call a coincidence. We just rattled off maybe like 5 to 7 coincidences because it's one thing for me to say, I wonder what Veronica's doing at that particular moment in the night.
Right.
For her to then sort of convey or corroborate, oh, I'm scared, my house is making the same sounds that your house makes. To text you, like you said, because I know you're all tight, but like, not necessarily BFF type of like, Rob will know what to do, and
right.
Rob is my main guy or something.
Exactly.
And the lateness of it, the timing of everything. So I don't know if that night we had sort of tapped into some, that was certainly not the intent, and it's nothing I ever even pondered, of like using the board for some kind of voodoo shit.
Right.
Of like, go find this person and scare them, and then come back and report it back to me.
Yeah, right. Go tell me what she's doing. And, now that you say that, in hindsight, that's a good point, because you wondered what she was doing, and she was sleeping until whatever woke her up, and she got in touch with us. And right there, to me, means you maybe unintentionally sent something to find out what she was doing, and it was like reporting back almost. Mm-hmm. I mean,
and it was instantaneous.
Yes, and that's just a theory. Obviously, it takes 5 to 10 minutes to walk 7 streets. Just no, but seriously, it like hindsight with you telling that story, it kind of does make sense that like we had it out, we were having a slow night, you made a comment, and we got an answer from her instead of the board. And I don't know, maybe we unintentionally did that. We don't know. We didn't know what we were dealing with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean whether it was. Asking it that question about that person on that particular night, or all the other questions that we asked, I kind of just feel like that story lends itself to this all has credence, or this is all like valid.
Yeah.
Because there were a lot of other questions that we asked that, generally, and we didn't do a lot of like, I dare you to do this kind of shit. There were nights where it was like, kick the kick drum and that kind of shit. Yes,
which happened. It did happen.
The footsteps thing going up the stairs, that made us all leave in a heartbeat.
Yep.
So, I mean, yeah, there was definitely something there. No doubt about it. And it probably still is there.
Yeah, it's a lot quieter now.
Well, yeah, I mean, when I came back, a month ago or a month and a half or whenever it was, and I wanted to go back down there, the shit that you told me that had happened as far as the bad attachment goes, that dissuaded me immediately. I was like, I don't want to fuck with that thing anymore. If it was doing shit, like, independent of how we were trying to use it, I was like, it doesn't mean enough to me that I'm going to go and, like, say hello again. So.
Right. Well, and it's crazy too, because I tell people all the time now I'll never touch one of those boards ever again. I told you that last month when we met up for dinner and talked about it a little bit, and that goes to show how much like we were into it and all the things that we saw and the things that were happening then. Because the first thing we talked about when we got back together, we hadn't seen each other in years, was that, because it was just such an impactful thing. And from at this point in the movie, too, where the little girl gets possessed, it kind of doesn't really have much to do with the board anymore in the movie. It's kind of like now a possession, and she's kind of passing the possession around to other people. And we know that, the movie ends with them finding out that they actually accidentally played in a graveyard because there was a lot of bodies buried in the basement. And now all those bodies were coming through and trying to get revenge and whatnot.
Yeah.
As far as we knew, we never played around any area that had a death. Like, we didn't, like, nobody came through on the board and said that they died in the house, and there was no, like, I remember asking my parents, did anybody die in this house, and nobody knew of anything like that. So I can't speak for what that part of the movie meant, but when it got to the end and it became like the little girl trying to kill everybody else and the possession jumping bodies, that's what I mean when I say the movie really sensationalized the Ouija board. Am I saying that there's probably never been a case of that has happened where a possession happened? I'm not saying that at all, because there probably has. And you brought up a good point that The Exorcist had to do with, a Ouija board and things like that as well. And I do think that there are cases of that. Whether or not it looks the way that Hollywood says that it looks, probably not. But it's probably still pretty gruesome and nasty if there's all these true stories based on it that build some pretty freaky, mythology around it.
Right. I think that, the key as far as belief in possession goes is really just that. Like, if someone believes in possession, that gives the entity that is possessing power. That's the school of thought on it anyways. Like, I couldn't tell you if I really believe or disbelieve in possession. I guess I wouldn't really rule it out. But the more obsessed you get with shit like we did, I feel like that lends itself to you're saying, like, I'm a believer and I want to experience more of this. And I've read other websites, not necessarily, materials in academia, more like popular scholarship or like general reading, as far as, the moment that you stop treating the board just as entertainment, that's when shit could get really dangerous on you. So I think in the beginning when we were playing with it, it was entertaining. It was like, it was this and that. Like, it was partially insightful with the things that it would tell us, and it was also just kind of cool. Like, it wasn't anything I had experienced before. And then I think the longer that we were playing with it, the word obsessions come up a lot, and at that point the board is really like possessing you. Like,
yeah.
We kind of lost ourselves in it.
It might have been a little unhealthy.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was trying to start some new relationships at the time, and they would always come up with, like, what do you like doing for fun? I'd say, oh shit, I gotta go. It's time to play a Ouija board at Rob's house in his basement. And, I mean, I think going back to, whether we're talking Ouija, Origin of Evil film, or, The Exorcist, the novel and the film, Reagan plays with a Ouija board, and she's playing solo.
Yep.
And she's talking to Captain Howdy, and her dad's name is Howard, and it's kind of like, makes you think it's a red herring for like, oh, well, this girl is just missing her dad, so she made up an imaginary friend. And then if you read the novel, there's a character who is like written completely out of the movie named Miss Perrin, who is a spiritualist, and she was at Chris McNeil's dinner party with like the astronaut and all the clergymen and all that shit. Mm-hmm. But they don't give her any lines in the movie. She's more of a presence, like she gives Chris a book, and she's sort of counseling her on, like, stay away from the occult and, like, black mass kind of shit.
Yeah.
And she does have a sort of dialogue with Chris at one point to say, Reagan shouldn't be playing with a Ouija board. They're basically, like, portal ways into potential evil, especially if you're playing alone. Because, I mean, going back to the original instructions, they say it's meant to be played by two people. So, yeah, I don't know if it's just like one human is more vulnerable than two humans. Mm-hmm. But, you do leave yourself open, I would say, or a lot of, articles suggest you leave yourself more open to the influence if it's just you.
Well, let me ask you this, before I want to finish talking about the movie, and then we can get into a couple more stories before I let you go. After you finish the movie for the second time, what were your actual final thoughts on the movie itself? Would you, like, out of, 1 through 5 stars, we'll say pumpkins, it's Halloween time, 1 through 5 pumpkins, would you recommend somebody to check it out? And if so, do you think that there's enough truth from the things that you've seen with the Ouija board to say that, it's kind of factual, like something like that? Maybe not as sensationalized as the ending is, but the events leading up to, would you tell people, like, I could imagine that something like that could be possible because of my experiences?
So I'll give it 2 pumpkin scores, like 2 separate ones, as a film, and then as a sort of, like, Ouija truth scale.
I like it.
Ouija truth, I'll do first. Mm-hmm. And it pains me to say, because, it's almost October in Salem, I want to give the world as many pumpkins as I can. Mm-hmm. As far as Ouija truth goes, I think I would give Origin of Evil a 0. I would give it no pumpkins. Just for the reasons that we already talked about, I think going back to your, word of the night, sensationalize, well, maybe half a pumpkin. Or like a little piece of pumpkin pie. Because, I mean, it's true, or it's got some, like, veracity or truthfulness to it, in the sense that, like, yeah, that's how Ouija boards look, and they come with a planchette, and you can move it with your fingers. But I feel like the movie just, I don't know, man, it made it seem like there is no quality, or there's nothing about the Ouija board other than, like, a sort of demon-inviting quality.
Yeah.
And it seemed very explicit in, like, because even with the group of friends, there was, like, an element of danger throughout all of it.
Yes.
And then when Doris starts playing with it to, she thinks, reconnect with their dead father, mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, it goes back again to maybe I would give it a whole pumpkin, or an extra piece of pumpkin pie.
a couple slices.
What you had said earlier about some of the entities or messengers that we were talking to on the board being tricksters.
Yeah,
it gets the tricksters thing down great, but I don't personally like everything else that happens in the movie with those black-bodied ghoul demon things, and the fact that Doris just gets like entirely taken over.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, it starts like body hopping and stuff.
Yes.
I don't know, all that just makes me say like no pumpkin for you. So
well,
because it's just too over the top.
Yeah. I would probably give it 1 because of the trickster thing, and because it gave you the general idea of how to play it and what the rules are, and that stuff was fairly accurate. You don't play alone, you don't play in a graveyard, whatever the other stuff we talked but like after that it did become just all right, now this is just our tool to get to this weird, crazy, wacky ending. So but it gave you like a groundwork of like actual rules and how to kind of use the board. So on that alone, I will keep the pumpkin and not make it a pumpkin pie, and just keep it 1 pumpkin. Now, what would you rate the movie from 1 to 5?
That's tough.
Did you jump at all?
I did hold my laptop up in front of the screen because I knew I was going to jump. But I had also, I had it open in a media player, and I was, scrolling around. I was like, I want to know where the jumps are. It does have, do you remember that one scene where the priest is telling the mother and the non-possessed daughter upstairs, your daughter's possessed, and she's all fucked up.
That's the one that got me.
And he's being I don't know, he looks kind of insane.
Yeah.
He's getting bug-eyed, and he's like, she's fucked up. He doesn't say that, but he's just he's dressing it up like a priest talks.
He doesn't outright say that, but he totally fucking meant that.
Well, they immediately do a cut shot to her as the demon on the sofa.
Yeah.
And she's got
the
white eyes, and her mouth is open.
Yeah.
Her jaws
super long,
distended or something. And I remember seeing that shot when I was scrolling around, and I was like, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
And so I'd give it a 2 out of 5.
Okay, so we're pretty close, because I was going to give it a 2, 2.5-ish, because the movie itself wasn't great. It's one of those movies that if you see it one time, you're probably good, but it only really got that much from me because I did jump a couple times, even though I knew. Because when I was first watching it, you don't know what the demons are going to look like, right? So even though you're prepared for a jump scare, you don't know what. So when they did that cutscene that you were talking about, I was like, oh, Jesus. You know what I mean? It's
it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And they don't, what I appreciated about it, I don't remember them doing they didn't do anything on the sound editing that was brah, or nothing like that. It was just showing her on the couch like that.
No, you know what it was? It was the, she was on the couch like that. It was just the doorbell. That's all it was. The doorbell went off, and it cut to her on the couch because she was going to answer the door. So all you got was that ding dong and then the face, and you were like, holy.
I don't even know if I heard the doorbell. That's how much I was fixated on oh my god, look at her. I also thought that she did a good job with the she's like, you want to know what it feels like to suffocate to death?
Yeah.
Or get strangled to death.
Right.
And then she does this very deliberate, first this happens, then this happens, then whatever. And then they show the boy, and he's like, you're fucked up.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I thought that her delivery of all of that was also sufficiently creepy.
Yeah, for sure.
What keeps it from getting more than 2 pumpkins for me, the third act, or when shit really starts popping off and it just becomes a demon hop kind of deal.
Yes.
I thought that was all plus the backstory with the Nazis. It got so convoluted. And kind of just here's how we're gonna keep you watching now, or keep the pace going, or keep the action up.
Agreed.
It all just felt convoluted, and I don't really care what happens to these people anymore.
Right, and that's kind of where I left it, because I was actually kind of into it, and then as the movie was starting to wrap up, it started to lose me, and that's where I lost my attention span, I guess, for lack of a better term. But yeah, so I mean, definitely watch it, check it out if you haven't seen it, and tell us what you think. But for the most part, I think it was just extremely sensationalized, as all things in Hollywood are, but that's also coming from two guys who've had a lot of experience. So, you know, maybe for people who haven't, it is like, oh shit, that's really awesome, you know?
Yeah. And I'll say one more thing, because I think the face that she was making on the couch, you know, possessed with the doorbell, that was a cool shot. Also, when she tells that prospective boyfriend of her older sister to put his arm in the wall to look for treasure and that kind of shit, and they show her in the background, her fucking face is like a funhouse clown, and she's like bopping all over the place.
Yeah.
That was really, that'll also give you the willies.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they had it down. I don't know why they went in that other direction, because, man, like, if they would have just kept her and she was just the main fucking problem, like, they had it. And I was like, this is really good. And then it just took that turn, and I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah, the priest's scene in the bedroom where they find out, so when he's, all that builds suspense when he is saying, like, she's not talking for her father, this isn't a genuine, you know, sort of thing from an angel or like positive force. This is, you know, she's all fucked up and that thing is a demon.
Yeah.
That built a lot of great suspense. And then the older daughter's realization of, like, you know, if the problem is the house, we shouldn't be talking about this in here because we're in the house, so we're not actually hidden from it.
Yes.
I felt like up to that point, I was pretty cool with the film.
Yes.
It's the 30 minutes after that, or however long it runs on for.
Yeah.
And then the way that it ends with the stabbing, I was just like, what the fuck is this?
Same.
You know? So
I also would like to point out, too, that at the end, I'll leave that because I don't want to spoil the very, very end for people who are going to listen to this and then go and watch it. But let us know what you thought on across the board on social media. We're at ABAO Pod. Yes, that's short for All Bets Are Off Podcast. So ABAO Pod. But I think right up until that scene you were describing in the basement with the boyfriend, it wasn't long after that they lost me, because up to then I was very invested. And it was just that they tried to do like a creative twist, and it just twisted me the other way instead of more into it. So, but that being said about the movie, people are still going to be skeptical whether they watch these movies or listen to our stories or not. So I have a quick story, and then I'll kick it to you if you want to tell another one of a friend of ours who I also won't name. He was a skeptic, and he kept telling us that there was nothing and we were lying, and, you know, he had been in the basement a million times, and he was always the most afraid, but always kept telling us he didn't believe in anything. But he would hear things and see things just like the rest of us, so we really couldn't understand why he was so skeptical. And one night, it was just me and him, and he finally broke down and was just asking me questions, and I could tell that he was actually afraid, and he was saying he was a skeptic because he was afraid to admit that these things were happening. And from in between us, the only time I've ever heard it in the room that we were in and not the other room was that moan that you were talking about when we first started this episode, came from right between us, and there was only about 5 feet between us, so there was not a lot of space between us for that to have been anything other than what you were describing.
Yeah.
We ran up the stairs and out that door, because at the top of those stairs, there was a door to the outside, remember? You could either hang a right and go into the kitchen, or go straight outside. And we ran out the door, we got in the car, we went to see Veronica and her friends. I don't know why. It's not like they were going to save us or protect us. But I remember staying there until the sun came up, because I got the feeling that whatever his skepticism or like his fear, this thing was all about proving to him that, oh, okay, really? And then it was just like right there in our ears. And I'll never forget that. That was one of the most scared nights that I've ever had. And that's saying a lot because I lived there.
No, yeah, I think I know who you're talking about. And I also want to say that we did hear that noise the one other time in the same room, but it was on the far end. You remember this story.
Was that the computer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because for people who are younger than us, I'll say that desktop computers used to be very loud, and everybody had one, and it kind of, like, at worst sounded like a vacuum cleaner, just the fans in it, and the machinery would just be, like, whirring so loud.
Yeah.
And you had one in the far end of the basement, very far wall away from where we had the board, because the table was set up pretty much on the exact opposite end of the room. And I think it was another sort of slow night. I can't really remember what was happening, but...
I remember this night.
we were sitting far away. You also said that you thought you saw something come through the wall right before this.
Yeah.
What caught my attention, I think I'm more of an oral, like, A-U-R-A-L, like, my ears are big and, like, well, no, I'm big on sounds, I guess. My ears are average size as far as ears go. But that fucking, computer fan was humming constantly, and what got me was it shut off, and that never happened before.
Yeah.
And I'm, appreciative of the fact that computers can shut off by themselves. There could be a power surge, whatever. So it shut off, and I was like, fuck, that was weird.
Yep.
Got totally quiet. Then I don't know if the sound came first or if the computer turned back on first. But the computer turned back on, doesn't really matter which order it was in. And that moaning, groaning, demon, whatever sound, ghost sound it was making it, that had always been in the laundry room. It sounded like it was standing right at the goddamn computer. And my sense was like, I just shut the computer off so that y'all could hear me.
Right.
And I had never heard it in the room with us before. And I must have had the same reaction, or me and you had the same reaction as how you did with our mutual friend.
Yeah.
Because I got the fuck out of there. We said goodbye real quick with the planchette, and the stairway was right behind me. I tucked and rolled and ran up the stairs and said, I'm going to fucking get out of here.
Yeah. Yep. And that was the night that we came back because I had to go home, and it was like 3 a.m. and the attic light was on. And everybody was sleeping when we left, and everybody was
that?
Yes, that was the same night. That's why we weren't there anymore, because we got scared with that whole computer thing, and we took off. And everybody was asleep.
I think I asked you about that in the same exact way at Red Robin when we were talking about this.
Yeah, you did. Well, I gotta say, too, is to paint the picture, is we had the basement, and anybody who was home in the house that was asleep was 2 floors up, not 1 floor up. So they were 2 floors up from us. And everybody had been sleeping. We ran out of the house at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and we came back, and the attic light that was not on was then on. So, be skeptical all you want, but me and you lived it.
Yeah, we had probably gone to Mickey D's because you lived right up the road. Came back. I do vividly remember that because it felt like a scary or like paranormal movie kind of type shit of like, what's that? Is somebody up in like the top of your house?
Right.
And I remember you seemed freaked out because you lived there. Mm-hmm. I was under no obligation to like go back into that place. But yeah, it caught my eye because it was so late, and I was like, what is that light? And you're like, that's my attic.
Yeah.
And I was like, is that light usually on? And you said, no. Like, who the fuck or what the fuck would be up in my attic right now with the light on at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning?
Right. And that attic door used to open on its own all the time, like with force, not just like where it would open like a crack, like it would swing open and hit the wall. So that was a weird thing too. And then of course, to get to the bedroom, I had to walk past it. So it was not a fun.
Terrible.
I think I might have slept in the living room that night.
Well, you ain't safe anywhere in there because I mean, attic light goes on, bad attachment. Hearing footsteps come at you from around the corner in your living room on the couch.
Yeah. Everything
that's going on in the basement. Mm-hmm. There ain't a floor in there that's like real desirable for sleeping, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was rough.
The scariest story I think I heard from you that I wasn't there for was the one that, and thank Christ that nothing like this has ever happened to me in my whole life, because it is, I think, the scariest thing I could ever, other than like, dying in a plane crash or drowning in the middle of the ocean. I would put it up there. Somebody was sleeping in the basement on the couch,
yes,
and they woke up and someone was just standing over them. I just got chills going up my back just saying that and envisioning it happening.
Yeah, so a buddy of mine had moved in with us, who I also will not name, but he used to sleep in the basement because we only had so many bedrooms. So it was, the basement was, like you said, it was done, and it was like a bachelor pad. There was like a living room area, the TV, the computer area, and then there was like a sitting area where you could have like food and meals, where we used to play the board. And, yeah, he used to sleep on the couch down there when all of us would finally go to sleep. And, yeah, he said one night he opened his eyes and somebody just stood over him, and no matter how many times he opened and closed his eyes, it was just there for a long time. And he said it didn't just dissipate when, like, it started to get light outside at one point and he could still see it. And then finally it did go away. But yeah, he said he used to see people walking around down there all night long, to the point where he would talk out loud to, like, let them know he wasn't afraid so that they would stop. And, like, he would literally be like, hey, what's up? When they would walk out of the back room, just to see, because he's like, if I'm afraid, what if they want me to be afraid? And then they, like, hang out and, like, try and fuck with me even more. Like, if I just act like I'm cool with it, will they stop? Yeah. So I don't know if they ever did, but he moved out after a couple of months anyways. But yeah, for the majority of those few months, he slept down there.
The story always makes me get chills in my upper back and lower neck and on my arms.
I know.
Because that would just scare the living shit out of me. If it's one of those things, everybody's done this, I think, of, like, especially after you see a scary, usually in the vein of, like, you know, paranormal, supernatural film, and you go to bed and you close your eyes, and it's like, if I open my eyes right now, am I going to see something? And you sort of spook yourself out like that. Mm-hmm. And all those sort of, like, it's the unseen, like, that's the kind of scary shit that stays with you, I think, more than, like, slasher,
yeah,
you know, torture porn kind of shit.
Yep.
And what you described, that kind of story or that kind of experience, is somebody kind of, like, constantly getting into your space and directly looking at you, is a very, like, I don't know, overt act of, like, they are trying to exert dominance over you in some way.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's no different from, you know, if you're on the subway and you catch somebody just, like, staring at you and they won't stop. Mm-hmm. It's very offensive and it's very alarming and threatening. So, yeah, I don't know how he was able to function after that. I feel like I would have had a nervous breakdown.
I think the first time he was too scared to move, so he just hoped for the best. But I will say that since removing the board from the house, there is less activity. But I don't think there'll ever be no activity. You know, you still hear things, you know, floors creaking and doorknobs rattling, and, you know, the stairs still make that walking, you know, you hear the footsteps on the stairs, and there's still eerie feelings in the basement. But but that stuff was always there. The board came in, that stuff got worse, board went out. That stuff that was getting worse kind of started to settle. But I also think that people like me and you, who aren't there anymore to antagonize it, so to speak, or to keep our interest in it going, which kind of, like, lends our energy to whatever's there to, like, be more out in the open and loud and do things. I think with us not contributing to that, it would kind of go a little more dormant because it doesn't have anybody there to, like, bounce off of, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that without there being a real, like, motivating force or, like, catalyst, it would probably just lie dormant. Yeah. I don't think it's gonna, like, I don't think it would go away.
No, it's
but
not.
I think that we made it just into some sort of an emergent power.
Yeah, it's definitely still there. Or maybe not all of them. But, you know, and of course, I know people are skeptical on this too, but a lot of psychics have been talked to and consulted about this and confirmed that there was a lot of things in that house, and some of them are now gone. So some of them are now gone. That means there's still some there, but we're not there to, you know, keep it going. The board's not there. So it's, you know, it's come a little ways since then.
Yeah. If there's no one there to play with it, then you'll probably just get bored. Maybe that's why some have left. I don't really know. But,
it could be.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I was saying, and this just goes to things I've read about, you know, if you're not a believer, gets power from belief, so maybe it'll dissipate. I think it goes the same with just, you know, its very existence or sense of power. If we're not sort of feeding it there, then it's going to get weaker.
Yeah.
Or its influence is going to be less perceptible and less strong. So,
agreed. Yeah. I totally agree. So, Dan, thank you for doing this, man. I really appreciate it. We're going to let people know, too, that you're actually going to be back on in a couple of weeks because we're going to do a breakdown and a re-ranking of the Halloween franchise. And it's going to be with you, with Mike Burns, who is our resident horror expert, all things horror, especially if it's like EBD-F rated, like way under the radar from Scandinavia and Sweden. He knows, he owns it. He has it on Blu-ray, Laserdisc. He's going to be here. And I love you, Mike. I'm just messing with you. And hopefully my co-host, Chaz Stanley, will also be here if he gets his ass in gear and finishes the franchise, because he's watching it for the first time.
That is insane to me that somebody could go through life and you've never seen any of the Halloween movies.
Right.
Any of the... How many of those? Like 11?
I think after the new one, it makes 11, and we're also not including the remakes. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, people who are listening. We're not going to include the 2 Rob Zombie movies in our re-ranking. We're just doing the ones that are in the actual franchise. We have our own thoughts over the Rob Zombie ones. Everybody's got a different opinion on those.
God.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Me personally, I don't like them, but I know some of you listeners out there do, so we're just going to play it safe and just do the actual franchise, not the remade movies.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that saves me from having to take my blood pressure medicine, because if I had to get on this call and talk about the Rob Zombie piece of shit dumpster fires...
all right, I'm gonna call out some of my listeners right now, because I swear you guys just like it because it says a Rob Zombie film. That's it. I said it.
No, I would say those are more sociological productions, because they try to ascribe all these different reasons as to why. Yeah. You know. Oh, it's good that Michael killed this deadbeat because he was a deadbeat, like white trash kind of thing.
Right.
And you watch the originals, you don't have to deal with any of that kind of, social, political commentary or anything.
Yep.
It's just a good versus evil, or sort of, man versus animal kind of narrative.
For sure.
So, yeah, that'll save us some breath.
Yes, but you are going to have to watch. You are going to have to watch the new one, Halloween Kills. So
gladly.
Yeah, so check that out, because that's going to be in what we re-rank as well. So, dude, thank you again, man. This was a lot of fun. I'm sure we can do this for like another 3 hours, but for my listeners, I'm looking at my little timer over here, and I'm like, right about now, they've had their fill.
Understood. No, yeah. If they decide they want to hear a sequel, there are more stories.
Oh, yeah.
I would just say, yeah, don't take these boards lightly. Mm-hmm. If you are going to play with them, just try to treat it like entertainment. So,
yeah.
No, I appreciate you having me, man. It was good catching up again, and look forward to the next one.
All right, man. Sounds good. We'll see you in a couple weeks here on the pod.
All right. Sounds good, man.
All right. See ya.
Later.
The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.